Hello, my name is Adam Kahn, and this is my half-assed channel. I'm going to start with my usual disclaimer. I'm not a financial planner, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a lawyer. Please reach out to your financial advisors or anybody else before making any of those decisions. The information I provide here is for entertainment only. I'm just a guy who has some experiences that I like to share. And to be fair, if you want to hear about my background, I'm happy to share too. I was a professional trader at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for my own accounts for a long time, and then I owned a restaurant, and I've done a whole bunch of things. I still trade, and I'm still active in the markets. But that being said, I want to talk a little about the last video and what I talked with Jacob about and what we talked about in terms of his investment that he did. So a little of what got me started, and if I've told the story, I apologize for telling it again. I like the story because I think it helps people to learn to invest and not be intimidated by it. I was super fortunate when I was a kid that around 18 or 19 or 17, my grandfather, who had done well later in life, gave all of his grandkids a gift that was $10,000 that he offered us, and my mom didn't let any of us have it. I wanted to invest stock in it, and I kind of went to her and said, why can't I have my money? And she asked why, and I told her I wanted to buy stock, and she looked at me a little bit weird and said, okay. Then she asked me what companies I wanted to buy. I wrote a few on a piece of paper, and they were basic companies. I mean, I'll mention them when we in a minute, and brought them to her and showed it to her, and she kind of looked and said, okay, if you want to buy those, you can buy those. So I told Jacob this story, and the stocks on my list were Eastman Kodak, GE, Chrysler, McDonald's, and one other. Now, part of what's interesting is Eastman Kodak went out of business. Chrysler I sold for it wasn't a computer and it wasn't quite a typewriter. When I was in school, they had these little in-between things that you could write a paragraph or two and it would remember it. So I used my Chrysler to buy that. GE didn't do a whole lot, but McDonald's has split 4 times since I bought it. So my 100 shares, which were 2,300 of what I spent, would have turned to 200, then to 400, then to 800 shares, and McDonald's is trading 270 some odd dollars a share. So he and I took a calculator and I showed how that's $216,000. I don't still have those shares. And I really kicked myself for it because, quite honestly, each time it split, I would sell it and buy something that any kid would use. I mean, I was 19 when I did it, but it's a great lesson that I'm trying to explain to him, that you don't have to pick perfectly. 2 of the companies went out of business or did nothing. One of them I sold, and only one of them continued to grow and do that. And to be fair, even when I bought it in 1988 or 89, I had already heard the stories of somebody's grandmother who put $1,000 in McDonald's and it turned into millions of dollars, and they were like, it wasn't like I was that kid. It was no different than where companies are now. It was a well-established, solid, big company that everybody knew. No different than lots of companies you think of. So I hope for Jacob that if I take this account and he picks 4 or 5 or 6 stocks and puts a little in each and lets them marinate for the next 30 years, that, maybe 1 or 2 of them really perform and a couple go out of business, even though you're shocked because they were big names and how could they not have continued with the world, because that seems to be what he's picking. And he can use that money in future life. It's not like I expect it to make somebody tons of money this week or this month or whatever. I just think if you leave it and let it continue and don't mess around too much, just leave it where you put it. Don't worry about whether it's gone too far and maybe it'll come back. Because I'll tell you what, in that run up to 216,000, I don't know, there must have been 2 or 3 times where the stock fell in half. It had this general pattern where it would run from teens or low 20s up to 60, and they'd announce their split, and then after the split it would collapse and fall in half or wherever it did, and it did that a couple times. So when the stock comes back down, don't watch, go to work, do your job, leave it alone, and hope it turns into real money. So that's my guess for today, and like I said, I'm wearing the same shirt because I'm doing all the recordings in the same day. Have a great one. Bye-bye.